What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings, this time for the first major of the year down at Augusta National. It's Masters Week. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and I'm joined by our PGA analyst at Occupy, Niromada. Niro, happy Masters Week. How are you?
Yeah, Super Bowl week for PGA DFS, so you can't be bad on a week like this. Like you look forward to this one all year. So very excited and really looking forward to breaking down the tournament. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. Super excited for Masters Week. And we're also excited. Shout out to DraftKings for sponsoring this video this week. We appreciate you. And what we're going to do in this video, we're going to talk about the pricing on DraftKings for the Masters, a little bit different than it was for the Players Championship last month. We'll talk about which contest to play on DraftKings because we have some really big contests to target this week. Then we'll discuss the importance of course history and recent form at Augusta for the Masters. We'll give you some picks from each of those buckets along the way. Then we'll dive into what our Occupy model is telling us as the top plays from a data-driven perspective for the Masters. Who will be popular? We'll talk about which players will be popular in the large field GPPs, the millionaires, as well as your small field and high stakes GPPs as well. We'll discuss our early trifecta leans as we're recording this early on Monday. And then any weather or showdown angles we will discuss at the very end of the video. So, Nero, let's talk about the pricing first and foremost. Because if you remember last quote unquote major for the Players Championship, we had guys priced in the 5Ks. And we sat on this video on this channel and discussed how difficult that made some things as guys were super underpriced. But this week, pretty normal. Guys all the way down at 6K at the very bottom. Scheffler 12-4 at the top. And it makes it a relatively normal week if you've been playing PGA DFS all season.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, DraftKings was doing more experimentation with the pricing. You had a lot more tournaments where you had the guys down in the 5K level, especially for the majors. And then thought maybe they were going to do the same thing this year because they did that. They did it at the players, as you mentioned. But we're back to what I would call traditional DraftKings pricing for the Masters. A number of players above 10K, and then a whole lot of players in the 6K and 7K range. Should also be noted when we look at salaries and we look at the field. This is a condensed field. I think Vijay Singh dropped out, so I think there's 95 total golfers. Usually it's in the upper 80s. But it's not as many. It's not as many players, so everything gets condensed. The ownership gets condensed. The salary range gets condensed, and that also means this doesn't have anything to do with the salaries, but it also means that you need to get 6 of 6 across in your contest because that 6 of 6 percentage is higher than usual this week due to that condensed field.
Absolutely. And we look at how the pricing is constructed, and a lot of people, their first reactions, if you've been playing PGA DFS all season, is that the pricing is soft, right? Because Nero, we get guys like Corey Connors and Tony Finau, and even some of the live guys at prices that we normally wouldn't see them in a typical event.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look back through my notes on previous masters, I almost every single year I have in there soft pricing. This year's no different. Again, contests are bigger. You have more participants than normal, so it does make it a little more appealing to build balanced, which is one of the strategy things we talk about week to week in the plug, because you have so many what I would call like good golfers, like guys who are actually really good at the game of golf, sitting at very affordable prices this week.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the bigger contest this week. DraftKings actually has three different millionaires on tap. And we say it's rare to get a millionaire or a chance to win $1 million in PGA DFS. We have three chances this week at different bankroll levels. We have the $10 GPP millionaire on DraftKings, which has 470,000 entrants. We have the $100, which is only 27,000 entrants. That's smaller than the typical flagship GPP each week on DraftKings. And then for those of you who have won tickets or have a larger bankroll, there's a 3K millionaire with a million to first, and only 1,300 entrants or so in that contest as well. So there are so many chances to take advantage of a shot at $1 million this week. We're all about contest selection, but we're also about being realistic at how many chances per year we get a crack at a million. This is one of those weeks. But in addition to that, we also have a variety of other contests that are larger than usual that DraftKings posts during Masters and other majors weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no question. This is my favorite week to play PGA DFS on DraftKings. Not only due to being able to take swings at those $1 million first prizes, which, as you mentioned, we only get 5 times a year in the PGA DFS world, but also just for all of your standard contests, they're all bigger than usual. So the driver, which is the $200 single entry this week, it's a $400,000 prize pool and 100K to first. In a non-masters week, that contest is smaller. So, from a playing perspective, it's very fun. It's very enjoyable. But I also like to mix in some smaller contests with my bigger selection where I'm taking the bigger swings at the bigger first prizes. And a lot of those smaller contests will get posted on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening as the big contests fill up. And so I like to make sure, if I'm looking at my entries, portfolio style, I want to make sure that I have a selection of some of those smaller contests to help balance out some of that bigger contest action that I'm going through on those other contests.
Extremely good points, Nero. So be on the lookout for those contests. And on that note, we actually have a message from our friends over at DraftKings. The battle for the green jacket is heating up this week in Augusta, and there's no better place to sweat the action than DraftKings Daily Fantasy, the ultimate destination for fantasy golf fans. And for this year's first major, DraftKings is giving all customers a shot to play free for a $1 million top prize with your next $10 deposit on the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app. It's simple to play. Build your dream lineup while staying under the salary cap, then sit back and watch as your players rack up the points. Every birdie, every bogey, every clutch putt, feel the intensity of every shot. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app to play free for a shot at the $1 million top prize with just a $10 deposit. And that's for all DraftKings customers. Just download the Daily Fantasy app for your free shot today. The crown is yours. So, Nero, now let's get into our course history and recent form discussion, because we can really narrow down the player pool here. And for those of our viewers who aren't subscribed at Occupy Fantasy or don't have access to industry projections, some of the stuff we talk about in this video, you can build your player pool, condense it down really quickly. So we hear all the time, course history matters at Augusta. Experience matters at Augusta. There's an infamous chart out there from Data Golf where you see players start to make that leap on their third Masters appearance. They peak around their ninth or 10th Masters, then they get old and start to fall off after that. You do course history models every single week. This week is the biggest and most predictive course history week. So run us through maybe your thoughts on course history here and who some of the top guys in your course history model are that people can play in their DraftKings contest this week.
Yeah, so I'll read through the list of like my top 10 to 15 players that I have in my own personal course history model. And basically, it's just really factoring in a little bit of form, a little bit of long term and short term form, but really focuses heavily on how has the person performed at the course relative to their expectations. What was their salary based expectations on previous forays at Augusta National, and then how does that then rank them, in this field if I ignored all their variables and just looked exclusively at that. As you mentioned, this is the week I play, course form and course history more than any other week, because it is so historically predictive here. Um, and then last thing I'll say before I read the list, the list is a little bit biased because players who have, let's say, only one finish here and it's a high one get ranked higher in the model than maybe players who have a few high finishes, but also have some miscuts or some low finishes in there. So you'll hear some surprising names with a lot of names that you would expect. So we'll start with the top three: Ludwig Aubert, Zalatoris, might be a little surprising, and then the least surprising name on here, Scotty Scheffler. So Aubert's at the top because he's only played once last year and he finished second. Zalatoris has never finished outside the top nine here, so his three starts: ninth, sixth, and second. And then Scheffler. So one thing you'll notice about those three players is they are outstanding mid to long iron players, and they are exceptionally accurate with their irons. One thing we know about Augusta National: distance matters, putting short game, all those things matter. But the thing that matters the most is hitting it into the correct quadrant of the greens at Augusta. Not only to feed your ball close to the pin position, wherever that pin position might be, but also to give yourself a realistic two putt and a two putt that doesn't force you to go downhill, sideways, something that allows you to go uphill or at least even with the terrain, because that is the fastest way to make a big number at Augusta is to get yourself above the flag or in some place relative to the flag where you have a very challenging two putt to try to get home. So no surprise that we see those three at the top. My next three or my next four, we'll say, will include some surprises. So fourth is Matthew Pavon, and fifth is Adam Schenk. So there's two players at the very bottom of the salary ranges. Form currently iffy, especially with Pavon. But Pavon, gets ranked high because one finish in 12th here last year. Schenk, very much the same way, was also tied for 12th with Pavon here last year in his only start. Rom and Morikawa that's completely unsurprising. Morikawa especially dangerous with those irons. My next four, so this will be my top 12 then. Nikolai Højgaard, Patrick Reed, Xander Schauffele, and Chris Kirk. So Højgaard, again, another one of those high finish. It was 16th last year. Kirk is a little surprising. Now this is his area of where he grew up and where he lives, and all those kind of things. His game fits, and the fact that he's a very good iron player and a good short game. Little less on the distance, and you might notice that too by the fact that like his finishes 5 times: 16th, 23rd, missed cut, 33rd, and 20th. So good finishes, yes, but nothing that is, fourth, second, third, nothing that really would have caught your eye. So that makes him, what I would say is like a little bit sleepy. Okay, so then the last three to round out the top 15, Robert McIntyre, Cameron Smith, and Hideki Matsuyama. So Cam Smith and Matsuyama, no surprise. McIntyre, a little bit of surprise. He didn't play here in 23 or 24. He did play here in 2022 and 2021, and his two finishes are 23rd and 12th. So, and I would say, I think he'd agree, he's a much better player now than he was a number of years ago, and much better in contention in the heat of the moment as well. So, another one that could be a little bit sneaky, who's got some good course history, and last 2 years kind of throws everybody off the scent of him.
Fingers crossed, and we'll talk about McIntyre here a little bit more once we get into the model part of this video. But lots of great stuff there, Nero, and it's good to manage course history with guys who have just a little bit, like Pavone and Schenk and Oberg, and then turn that into how they've been playing recently. And that's what I'll talk about next, because Nero, every piece of content you see out there during Masters Week and even the weekend before is, here are 10 Masters trends to pick the winner. Here are all the trends that you have to have, all the features you have to have if you're going to win the Masters. But the problem with that is we still have 5 other spots to fill out in our DFS lineup. Looking at Masters trends at who's going to win the tournament isn't going to help us win $1 million on DraftKings, because we still got 5 other spots to fill. So I took a different turn this past weekend and did some research on the past 3 Masters. And I looked at which golfers finished in the top 1% of lineups and GPPs at a much higher rate than their counterparts during those 3 events. That gave us around 47 guys. So if, let's say there's a 10,000 person in GPP, which golfers ended up in the top 100 lineups more often than other golfers in that same event? So with those 47 golfers, Nero, I looked at their recent form for that season from January leading up until the Masters, and we get some really interesting numbers here. And I'll list out the numbers and the trends for our DFS plays for the Masters, and then get your thoughts, Nero. So from 2021 to 2024, if you look at these players, the average number of missed cuts that these top 1% players in DFS have had, 0.8. So very few missed cuts among this group of top 1% DFS players. 47% missed 0 cuts. But I think the most important number here is 96% of these players, so 45 out of the 47, missed 2 cuts or less. So you can automatically basically cross off any guys that missed 3 or more cuts so far this year. And if you're thinking about live, maybe guys who finished outside the top 30, top 40 of their live events. You look at top 5s in the calendar year, The average number of top fives that calendar year before the Masters, 1.25. 72% had at least one top five. So if you really want to narrow down your player pool, a guy had to have a top five so far in 2025. You extend it out to top 10s, 91% had at least one top 10. There's a guy like Thigala, hasn't any top 10s. You could probably cross him out. In fact, the average number of top 10s before the Masters was 2.3 for this top 1% group. Here's another interesting number, and this crosses out a lot of names for your player pool. Just 2 out of these 47 guys missed the cut in their prior event. So that means guys like Ludwig Gobert, Akshay Bhatia, Hideki Matsuyama, Sam Burns, Max Homa, you probably weren't playing him anyways, Tom Kim, Matt Fitzpatrick, and even JJ Spawn. If they missed the cut, there's only a 2 out of 47 chance the past 3 years that they were in a top 1% DraftKings Masters lineup. So, Nero, I think this is a much better way of looking at our player pool for the Masters than those generic who's going to win the Masters trends.
Yeah, first of all, I don't like hearing Ludwig's name in there because I really want to play him this week, and I still probably will, obviously. But I think the thing that I take away from that more than anything, well, a few things. First of all, Augusta is sneaky hard. So the winning score is going to be 8 under, 10 under, maybe 12 under, 13 under at the most. And it always ranks, especially lately, in the top 4 or 5 hardest tournaments of the year. I think people have the romantic notion of like the Tiger years of Augusta when he'd get to 20 under, 19, all that kind of stuff. But they've really have toughened up the course over the years, and that type of scoring just doesn't happen anymore. So the way that I tie that into the data that you just provided is like Augusta is not a week, to just show up and find your game. Like you need to be on your game when you roll into Augusta. If you're out of form or out of sorts, it's not the place where you're just going to be able to find it because iron shots, the approach shots require so much precision, and the short game work requires being so dialed in to lag putting and the finer points of all those chips that you have off of very tight lies and slopes. That requires clean contact with the sweet spot on the club face. Anything that's not that is going to get punished. And misstruck iron shots also get punished. Now, they don't get punished here in very many instances by like being dumped into the water or being dumped into the woods. Where they get punished here, even inaccurate drives, like drives that find the fairway, but they find the wrong part of the fairway to give you a poor angle of approach into the green. They get punished because it makes it really hard to make a par. Because then you're chipping from a bad spot, or you have to hit like this amazing iron shot from this bad angle that you're on to just put it in the right quadrant of the green to give yourself a good shot at a 2-putt. So, I think this is a week you can dial up the course history and you can dial up the recent form numbers, and mashing those two things together probably gives you a pretty good feel for a group of guys who can help you with your DFS lineups this week.
In fact, if you just look at those trends I gave and those cutoffs, you can cut the player pool down to about 35, 37 golfers from 95. Now, granted, there's amateurs and old guys that were not playing anyways, but you cut it down to 35, 37. You pair that up with Nero's course history. Now you cut your player pool down. It makes decision making a lot easier this week when building your DFS lineups. Now, let's marry that even further with our Occupy model. The top plays in our Occupy model this week. This is our data-driven model. It looks at course-specific metrics that we need to have historically for players to succeed here. And Nero, not many surprises in the top of our model. Top 3 this week: Scotty Scheffler, Shane Lowry, John Rahm. Obviously, Rahm is a great fit as won the Masters. Scheffler was won twice in the last 3 years. I guess the big question is he hasn't won yet this year. How do we feel about his form? But I think the surprise is probably Shane Lowry, who the model's been on all season. And we know that when the model's on someone, eventually they do win. Can it be at the Masters?
I mean, it can be. He's won a major before, so I think that we know he's got the game to do it. Yeah, Scotty was second last time out, even though he hasn't won this year. Seems like he's rounding into shape. He's a very tough DFS fade, or even getting under the field on him is just, it hurts to do it at Augusta because he's so well suited. But the reason why the model's been on Lowry is because he's taken his iron game to another level this year, and his approach play has just been outstanding. So, I'm not surprised to see him ranked so highly this week when there's such an emphasis on approach play.
Next, number 4 and number 5 in our model are two of the cheaper options. They're right next to each other in the pricing, and we mentioned one of them already. It's Robert McIntyre and Corey Connors. Nero McIntyre,
Yeah,
I'm just really quickly. I'm trying not to get excited about McIntyre. I'm hoping his ownership stays under control because he's top 15 in 4 of the 5 major metrics that the model looks at for the Masters, plus everything else we've already talked about.
yep. One quick thing I skipped over John Rahm there. I think for Rahm, you look at his live finishes. So he finished ninth in the last event in Miami. That was his highest finish of the year. So his live finish is ninth, fifth, sixth, second. Again, smaller field, less quality, all those things. Yes, but he did have two starts at the end of 2024 on the European tour, and he finished sixth and seventh. So I think Rahm is playing well. Don't think he's playing as well as he was when he was at his peak and winning green jackets. But very, very dangerous on this golf course. So
And
definitely someone you can play this week.
probably better than he was playing heading into last year's Masters when he disappointed.
100%. He was 45th last year, disappointed. He was unhappy. But if you look at his live finishes running into that, they were not all like top sixes like he has had recently coming into this one. So I think he should be in better shape. Um, Connors, again, great iron player, sneaky good course history here. A lot of similar finishes where it's like he doesn't have a ton of like super high finishes, but man, he's got a lot of like 10th, 15th, 20th, like all that like hunting around there. And as the course has changed over the years and the premium on the iron play has increased, like he's done better. And totally agree with you on McIntyre. I think he could make a great like under the radar play. So we'll be watching his ownership this week intently, just because he's so well ranked in so many of the metrics that the model is taking into account this week.
Rounding out the top 10, we have mostly studs. It's Rory McIlroy, it's Ludwig Åberg, it's Colin Morikawa, and then it's number 1 player in the world, Joaquin Niemann. So, Nero, we look at these 4 guys. What stands out to you about these 4? Obviously, we talked about Åberg and his recent form not fitting that criteria, but we have different highlights for these guys. Obviously, some warts as well, but I'm really curious to get your take on these 4 in particular.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm wondering if Phil is going to share those world rankings that he has with the rest of us, where he has Joaquin number one, or if he's just going to leave it as Joaquin number one and leave us
That's it.
all in
That's it.
guessing at who else is in the top 10 there. Yeah, I think so. I think each of these guys has their own strengths. Um, but I think one thing is they're all like again, broken record here, but they're all very good iron players. Now Rory is the one who didn't used to be, but one of the reasons why he's in red hot recent form is because he has improved his approach play, especially with the wedges and things that are under 150 yards, under 120, under 100 yards. It seems from a technique perspective, seems like he's really able to hit like off speed pitches now. Like he takes speed off. The ball gets flighted down. There's not as much crazy spin on it. Seems like he's been working really, really hard on that. And I think that is what's really, I mean, we know he's the best driver of the golf ball on the planet. So, if he can have that same level of iron play, then his biggest hurdle is mental. I mean, his biggest hurdle here is career Grand Slam and all the pressure and all the things that go with that. Um, Ludwig again, great fit for the course. Did not love the miscut last week. That's the only thing that is not great. But again, he was a tournament winner just 2 months ago, so like can't be in that bad of form. And Morikawa just makes a ton of sense. Just the iron play, his Augusta finishes, like he's really really hard to get away from this week.
How about a tenth, a second, a 17th, and a second, and 5 starts this year?
I mean, if that's what you're looking for, like if you like high finishes, then you might like that form line there.
What about Joaquin? Just really quickly, we look at his live starts, 2 wins in his last 4, and the biggest question is though, can he get over the hump at majors? Generally, you need some major success, previous major success to finish highly here. Can he do it? Can he overcome that?
I mean, well, he clearly has the ceiling. He's got the ability to do it. He is a bit more of a hit and miss. You can even look at his lift stuff. So 33rd last week in Miami, won in the event before that in Singapore, 12th in Hong Kong, won in Adelaide in Australia, then was 33rd at the event before that, seventh in his last start on the European tour in November. And his starts here 22nd, 16th, 35th, 40th. Again, hasn't really challenged, but that goes with his major pedigree. When we look at it from a DFS perspective, I think if his ownership is suppressed, then he's a great giant contest play. If his ownership is high, then he's probably someone I'm looking to get under the field on and make him prove it to me that he can do it before I get too excited.
Now, speaking of ownership, this is a great professional transition into our next segment. Who will be the most popular players? And we're only going to look at cheap players for this segment on DraftKings, priced below $9,000. And again, we're recording this on Monday. Our projected ownership will continue to be refined throughout the week and be finalized Wednesday evening. But as of now, we have a pretty good idea, Nero, of who we expect to be popular in these millionaire GPPs on DraftKings. And then we have industry projections that we know will cause certain players to be higher owned in high stakes and smaller GPPs. So we start with the large field millionaires, and we don't have to go into too much detail here, but who's your list of who we expect to be the popular golfers that maybe we think about the benefit of fading them in these large millionaire GPPs for DraftKings?
I mean, no surprise it would be a lot of the guys that would fit under that the soft pricing umbrella. So Patrick Cantlay, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Sepp Straka, Keegan Bradley, and Michael Kim. Now, when you go to the high stakes, the guys that I expect to be higher owned in the high stakes relative to the other contests, the normal stakes or lower stakes contests. Corey Connors, Sergio Garcia, Keegan Bradley, Patrick Cantlay, Danny McCarthy. So you've got some crossover on that list, and then you also have a few that are unique to just the high stakes players.
So how would you use this data for you, the viewer? What I would say is consider limiting yourself to one, maybe one of these guys if you're playing the millionaire GPPs on DraftKings. If you're playing super cheap contests, right, quarter, nickel, dime, dollar, $2, these probably guys are probably good plays, so you can play them in most of your lineups. If you're playing high stakes GPPs, start to consider the cost benefit analysis of fading these guys. And guys like Connors and Bradley and Cantley, who fit on both lists, means that they're going to be high owned in the $10, and they're going to be even more high owned in the 3333 or any other high stakes GPPs.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, those high stakes GPPs tend to be a little bit smaller in terms of raw number of contest participants. So, you can get more relative leverage by fading those guys in those contests. It's riskier, 100% riskier, no question. But you do have a less obstructed path to first place. And that's what we're looking for with these contests that have such a big first place prize.
That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it. Now let's almost close out the show here with our trifecta list. It's Monday. We don't have a finalized list yet, but we have some early leans on who we expect to be moving. And if you don't know what the trifecta list is, make sure you check out our Discord. We'll post the final list Wednesday evening. Nero will also post an updated list Wednesday afternoon in the daily plug. But it's a pretty predictive list of who we expect to do well in upcoming events. And so, Nero, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys on this list of early trifecta leans that we think could make the final list by Wednesday. I'll name the guys, and maybe you just point out a couple notes about them. It's Aaron Rye on his debut, Zach Johnson, former winner, Will Zalatoris, mentioned already in this show. Sergio Garcia, mentioned as a popular play. He's a live guy. Cam Davis in his third Masters. Shane Lowry, mentioned already. And Minwoo Lee, recent winner of the Houston Open. So a wide variety of guys with different experience levels, different recent forms. Any takeaways, high-level takeaways from this early list?
Yeah, one other one to add in there, someone who I think should be somewhat popular this week, but is absolutely a great play this week, which is Sepp Straka.
Oh, yes.
So if you look at like Aaron Ryan, Zach Johnson, those would be two. You're kind of like, what? So Aaron Ryan has turned himself into a very good player, especially over the last year or so. Very good in the ball striking stats and does well off the tee on longer courses. And again, is someone who has like what I would like to call a neat and tidy type of game, relies on that rather than power. Zach Johnson obviously is like that. It's very surprising, top 20 last week. Plenty of experience here. Don't know that I can get behind playing too much of him, but as Phil showed us just whatever that was last year, 2 years ago, I mean, you cannot count out the veteran players when it comes to Augusta because they can overcome so much of maybe the physical disadvantages that they have in a normal tour event by really understanding the course, where to leave it, where to miss, where to play, where not to play, all of that kind of stuff around here just saves them a ton of strokes. Zalatoris, we talked about earlier with his great Masters pedigree. Straka, now this is his fourth Masters, and again, he's had just an outstanding season. If I look at my list, I don't even want to. How many top 12s is it? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Seven top 15 finishes this year.
Yeah, that's good.
Ridiculous. Very good, including a win at the American Express. And then to round it out, you got Sergio Garcia fits in that Zach Johnson bucket, except for Sergio's been playing very well lately on Live. So a first, a third, and a fourth just this year on Live. Played pretty well at the Miami event last week. He was hanging around the top five like all 3 days. And then our bottom three: Cam Davis, Shane Lowry, Minwoo. We've already talked about Shane Lowry. Cam Davis is his third Masters, so he was 12th last year. His current form, not good. He's the epitome of a high risk play. He's got very high ceiling and a very, very low floor. And then Minwoo, theoretically should be a decent fit at the Masters. Lacks a little bit of the iron game, but he's amazing off the tee, and he's got an outstanding short game. So I'll be very curious to see over the years how he starts to cope with Augusta. This is now, I think, will be his fourth start. He's got the raw materials to do well here if he can get a little bit of improvement in his iron play.
Appreciate those extra details, Nero. Always super helpful. So again, if you want the final trifecta list, make sure you check out OccupyFantasy.com for that list by Wednesday evening. We'll close out this show. An extra in-depth strategy breakdown for the Masters. We'll close out with some weather and some showdown notes. And Nero, it doesn't look like we'll have a wave advantage this week. Weather looks pretty calm, I would say. Any notes you have on the current forecast as of Monday afternoon? Any notes maybe we could have for there's going to be some bigger than usual round 1 through round 4 showdown contests on DraftKings as well? Any notes for those contests?
Yeah, well, today's the day you don't want to be at Augusta. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you're at Augusta today, my apologies, because you are getting wet and it's very windy. So today is actually going to be the worst weather day of the week, based on the current forecast. Now Saturday and Sunday look to be exceptionally calm. Nice weather, very dry, like look real good. You have a little more breeze on Friday than you do on Thursday. But again, you're talking again sustained winds on Thursday don't get above 10 miles an hour. Even your gusts don't really get above like 14, 15 miles an hour. Friday a little bit more, especially Friday afternoon. You have a little bit of extra winds. The sustained winds look to be more like 10 to 15 rather than 5 to 10, and your gusts get a little bit higher. So you might have some small advantages if you're out of that Friday afternoon. but this is the kind of stuff. Number one, like Brian said, you want to be paying very close attention for your showdown stuff to these forecasts. It's also a little bit harder. They do, the field is condensed and it's smaller, but they do traditionally play again outside of bad weather. They play in twosomes, so they do spread out the tee times, even though the field is smaller. So I'll keep an eye on it, and definitely something that will be in our previews and the Discord channel as the week winds on, to see if there really is a little bit more wind on Friday afternoon than everywhere else.
Love to hear that. Thank you, Nero. So again, if you're not subscribed to Occupy Fantasy, we do these videos for all of you to get free information on how to build your Masters DFS lineups for DraftKings. And if you're not going to pay for any data, we understand that. But if you want that extra edge for your Masters DFS lineups, check out OccupyFantasy.com. Our Occupy model full rankings for DraftKings and FanDuel will be up Monday evening or Tuesday morning. The Daily Plug, which has Nero's top plays and lineup strategies, course breakdowns, and weather notes, all in depth. That'll be posted Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning. Final Trifecta plays and projected ownership will be up on Wednesday evening. Our lineup builder, where you can build up to 300 lineups for all your DraftKings contests, will be up and running Tuesday afternoon with projected ownership and our model rankings. Everything you need. Listen, if you like the show and you want to show your free support, just click subscribe here. You'll get notified when we go live or post any videos for future golf DFS contests and DFS slates. Give us a thumbs up. That is the easiest free way to show support. If you like the channel, give us a thumbs up. Any questions or comments you have about the Masters, drop it below the video. We always love to hear from you. If you have questions about your lineups, questions about players, questions about strategy, drop it below the video and we'll answer you before the Masters starts on Thursday morning. So for Nero, I am Brian. Thank you everyone for listening. Thanks again to DraftKings for sponsoring this video. Let's have one. Everyone enjoy the Masters.